Kerry Morgan was Cassie Ventura's former best friend, Kerry Morgan. She described witnessing Combs assaulting Cassie twice.
Cassie for 17 years, but things went sour after she alleged that Diddy beat her with a wooden coat hanger and she signed an NDA.
Did a single moment in court make Diddy lose all composure? You won't believe what set him off when Kerry Morgan, Cassie's best friend, took the stand.
Ventura's former best friend, Kerry Morgan. She described witnessing Combs assaulting Cassie twice. The first time in a home Combs was renting in the Hollywood Hills. Morgan testified that, quote, "I saw him push her. I'm pretty sure he hit her." The second time allegedly happened in Jamaica. Morgan says they were in the bar area of a home when, quote, "I heard her screaming." She recalled guttural, terrifying screams. Combs faces the possibility of life in prison if convicted. He's pleaded not guilty and has denied all wrongdoing.
The courtroom was buzzing with quiet conversations and the sound of shuffling papers as everyone settled in for what they thought would be just another day in court. The atmosphere wasn't exactly tense yet, but there was an undeniable heaviness in the air. Diddy sat at his table, composed, leaning back slightly in his chair. His legal team was beside him, flipping through notes and appearing confident as if they had the day mapped out. The media seated behind the courtroom barriers whispered amongst themselves, cameras ready to capture anything remotely interesting. And then, to everyone's surprise, Kerry Morgan walked in. That's when things started to shift. Kerry wasn't someone most of the public had been expecting. Sure, her name had come up a few times, but few people anticipated the pivotal role she would play in this case. Cassie's best friend Kerry looked calm but determined as he took the stand. The prosecution, clearly prepared, welcomed her warmly, while Diddy's side exchanged glances that could only be described as uneasy. Diddy's gaze followed her every movement, his previously relaxed body language slowly stiffening. The tone of the room shifted as Kerry was sworn in, and whatever confidence Diddy had displayed earlier started to waver. At first, it wasn't obvious to everyone in the courtroom that Diddy was unraveling as a man known for keeping his composure in high-pressure situations, but those watching him closely began to pick up on the subtle signs. His jaw tightened, he leaned forward, hands clasped together, his eyes narrowing as Kerry began speaking. It didn't take long before the tension became palpable. Witnesses present later described the moment as electric, with the entire courtroom hanging on Carr's words, and more specifically Diddy's reaction. And then it happened. Kerry said something that hit a nerve. Details from her testimony, explosive personal details, poured out like gasoline on a fire. Diddy slammed his hand down on the table, his voice breaking through the otherwise quiet courtroom as he interrupted her testimony. Reports from media outlets describe him as visibly furious, with one journalist remarking it was as if he couldn't hold back another second. Security guards in the room tensed up, clearly prepared to step in if needed, while the judge repeatedly called for order. But Diddy's outburst wasn't just a reaction. It was a full moment of unraveling. He pointed toward Kerry, shaking his head as he muttered loudly to his legal team, his demeanor a stark contrast to the controlled image he'd worked so hard to maintain. Witnesses later spoke to reporters, describing the chaos. You could hear a pin drop one moment, and the next it was like the entire room was on edge. People were genuinely startled. One observer said another court insider mentioned that even Diddy's lawyers looked caught off guard, scrambling to calm him down. Cameras outside the courthouse caught a flurry of activity during the recess that followed, with reporters clamoring to piece together what had happened. But the real question looming over the room was simple. What did Kerry Morgan say that shattered Diddy's composure so completely? Whatever was in her testimony clearly had weight enough to crack one of the music industry's most unshakable figures. To understand Diddy's reaction, we need to know who Kerry Morgan is and why her words carry so much power in this case.
And was on the stand. That was Cassie Ventura's former best friend. What did Kerry say happened after that incident?
Cassie Ventura left the Intercontinental Hotel, went back to her apartment, her home, and there was Kerry Morgan waiting. She said immediately she saw the black eye that Ventura had testified Combs gave her after the freak-off got violent, and the whole reason why then the subsequent assault in the hallway happened. And then Kerry Morgan said about a half hour later, Sean Combs starts banging on the door with a hammer. It was not let in, but she said she heard him yelling, finally called some of Combs' staff members to try to get him to leave. Police were called, but Cassie Ventura said, and Kerry Morgan backed this up, that nothing ever came of it because Cassie Ventura refused to say anything about Sean Combs and what happened to her.
Aaron, I have to ask you, because Combs was sitting just feet away from Don Richard and Kerry Morgan in court today, how did he react to seeing them and hearing all of this?
He's been an attentive listener. In some cases, he would shake his head or nod along or consult with his lawyers, scribbling a lot of notes. This was an important part of the testimony because it made a turn, Eva. The jury had heard from Cassie Ventura directly about, in rather explicit terms, a lot of the sex acts. But the prosecution's whole case is that she was coerced into that sex because of the violence, the kind of violence that both Don Richard and Kerry Morgan said they witnessed. Now, the defense says there are other reasons for the violence. Jealousy, drugs, didn't have anything to do with coercing her into sex. But the prosecutors want the jury to hear these accounts to say that Cassie Ventura was not only telling the truth about being beat up, but that she had reason to then go along with Sean Combs' sexual demand.
Kerry Morgan might not be a household name, but in this case she's become one of the most critical voices as Cassie's best friend Kerry has come forward not just to support her, but as a key witness whose testimony could change everything. You have to ask, what does she know that others don't? What makes her word so impactful that they shook Diddy to his core? These aren't just questions people are asking out of curiosity. They are central to understanding why this trial has taken such a dramatic turn. Let's rewind a bit. Kerry Morgan and Cassie go way back long before the cameras in the courtroom. By all accounts, their friendship is the kind that's built on years of trust and shared experiences. Friends who were close to both women have described Kerry as fiercely loyal to Cassie, someone who's been by her side through thick and thin. And why does that matter? Because if anyone has been around long enough to see what went on behind closed doors, it's Kerry. Her proximity to Cassie over the years makes her testimony not just another statement, but a first-hand account of what Cassie endured. Carr's credibility isn't just tied to her long-standing friendship with Cassie. She's also someone who's been described as thoughtful, measured, and not the type to speak unless she's absolutely sure of her words. A source close to the case even described her as someone who doesn't do drama, which makes her decision to take the stand all the more compelling. She wasn't just dragged into the spotlight unwillingly. She stepped up knowing full well the gravity of her role in exposing the truth. But let's address the bigger question. What does Kerry actually know? According to reports, Carr's testimony isn't based on hearsay or vague observations. She claims to have directly witnessed or been told about key moments of abuse during Cassie's tumultuous relationship with Diddy. One media outlet described her as a piece of the puzzle no one saw coming, highlighting how much weight her words carry in this trial. While the exact details of her claims weren't immediately shared before her testimony, what's clear is that she's not holding back. She allegedly provided insight into patterns of control, manipulation, and incidents of harm that, if proven, could drastically shift the case in Cassie's favor. What also sets Kerry apart is her willingness to stand up to someone as powerful and influential as Diddy. It's not easy to go against a global icon in a public courtroom. Nearly everyone watching the case has commented on the sheer courage it takes to speak out, especially knowing the immense legal resources Diddy has at his disposal. This isn't someone who's looking for attention. Carr's statement suggests she's determined to seek justice for her friend regardless of the personal risk, and that makes her testimony impossible to ignore. So here's where we are. Kerry Morgan has hinted at details that no one else could provide, details that paint a disturbing picture of what allegedly went on, but the question remains, what did she actually say on the stand that sent shockwaves through the courtroom? That's a part nobody saw coming. And trust me, the allegations are explosive. Let's break down exactly what was revealed and why it left everyone, including Diddy, reeling.
Cassie Ventura's former best friend, Kerry Morgan. What did Kerry have to say?
So let me tell you, Kerry Morgan is crucial, and she came crucial because she comes off as credible. Because one of the first statements that she made is that she came here because she was compelled to testify. She no longer speaks to Cassie Ventura. They stopped talking in 2018 after this incident having to deal with where she was assaulted by Sean Combs, where Sean Combs grabbed her by the neck and also threw a wooden hanger at her. But also that it led to Cassie giving her $30,000 so she wouldn't say anything about that specific incident, and that was the end of their relationship. She also corroborated two of the assaults that took place having to deal with Cassie in terms of her being drugged and as well as her being punched. So she corroborated a lot of the testimony, but she came off as a neutral witness, and the defense wasn't able to break her as they wanted to, but was able to say that, look, it was still a loving relationship.
Kerry Morgan's testimony wasn't just another step in the trial. It was a moment that flipped everything on its head. From the moment she sat down, there was an unmistakable shift in the room. This wasn't just any testimony. It was a one people had been waiting for. In Diddy's case, dreading the buzz outside the courtroom beforehand, confirmed that her presence was highly anticipated. And when she began to speak, it became immediately obvious why what Kerry had to say wasn't just shocking, it was Devastating, the allegations came out slowly, but each word seemed to carry more weight than the last. Kerry started by describing years of behavior she says she witnessed firsthand. She painted a picture of a relationship that wasn't just toxic but dangerous. She talked about moments of control, manipulation, and abuse that Cassie allegedly endured at the hands of Diddy. But what stopped everyone in their tracks was a way she described one chilling incident after another. According to Kerry, there were moments where physical violence wasn't just a possibility, it was real. She claimed to have seen bruises on Cassie more than once, and even recounted specific moments where Diddy's temper exploded with terrifying consequences. But the allegations didn't stop at physical abuse. Kerry talked about psychological manipulation, saying that Diddy often wielded his power and influence to keep Cassie under his thumb. One of the most jaw-dropping moments came when Kerry alleged that Diddy would isolate Cassie from friends and family, even going as far as monitoring her calls and texts to maintain control over her life. According to her, this wasn't just about a bad breakup or tumultuous relationship. It was something much darker. If that wasn't enough, Kerry didn't hold back when it came to specific claims. She referenced one night in particular that left the courtroom stunned into silence. While she didn't share every detail, what she revealed was enough to leave an impact. She described a moment where Cassie allegedly called her in fear, saying Diddy's anger had reached a breaking point. Kerry claimed she had to step in and physically intervene in action she said could have escalated the situation further if things had gone wrong. The courtroom reaction was immediate. Audible gasps rippled through the room, and at one point the judge had to ask the gallery to settle down. Diddy's legal team exchanged frantic looks as Kerry's statements grew more explosive, but it was Diddy himself who couldn't seem to take it anymore when Kerry directly implicated him in an incident of violence, reportedly saying that he couldn't be stopped. That's when Diddy lost it. He muttered something under his breath and slapped his hand on the table so loudly it echoed. Witnesses describe it as a simmering rage finally boiling over. The judge had to pause proceedings for several minutes as Diddy's outburst made it difficult to keep control of the room. As shocking as Kerry's statements were, one question dominated everyone's thoughts: how would Diddy's team respond to these bombshell allegations? Would they address her claims head-on or attempt to discredit her entirely? What unfolded next would only add more drama to an already chaotic trio.
And I will say, I think she seemed to say things very matter of fact. There were definitely moments where there was a little bit of what I would call sass, which I didn't think was a bad thing. I think she represented herself very well, and I felt as I read what was being said, she seems like a very credible witness. I think this is going to be one that may stick out in the jury's mind because she was subpoenaed to be here. She is speaking in defense of Cassie, but at the same time, she was also very hurt by Cassie.
Yeah.
And the way that it all came out was very honest. So it's definitely an interesting one to go through.
Yeah, I mean, she's giving a perspective that it feels more like, I don't give a crap about any of these people, so I'm going to give it to you straight. I've moved on from all this, but let's go do it. And not really throwing Cassie under the bus anyway, but clearly doing it more honestly. So so she made it clear she was only there because of the subpoena, and she confirmed that she and Cassie, who met on a modeling shoot as teenagers, no longer speak because Ventura's boyfriend ate her. Now, was this Agnifilo the Costco lawyer did end up doing this or not?
Yes, Mark Agnifilo, or as we lovingly call him, the Costco lawyer.
Because it's just funny, there's this buildup of he's finally going to do something during this trial. It was our first chance to see Costco lawyer step up to the stand, Kim, right? So
we
go through, let's see how he does, yeah?
Yeah. It was fascinating.